All right, I'm Arlene Ash, and I'm waiting for, all right. I'm at Boston University School of Medicine. What am I doing here? I have years of experience giving testimony in various real-world situations that statistics is useful for. My doctorate is in mathematics. And in particular, I guess I got the election bug when I was asked to come to Florida in 2000 to testify about some of the absentee ballot fraud shenanigans that contributed to the outcome there. And I guess I haven't given up on it because it's become obvious that it's a problem that hasn't yet been solved and still needs some attention. Well, we got it. Great. So you've heard why audit. I just want to very, very quickly run through. Yes, one purpose, one important purpose is to be sure that the winner won. But from my perspective, perhaps certainly an equally important purpose is to find common sources of recurrent errors so that we don't continuously cycle back, so that we don't have the butterfly ballot in 2000 and the screwed up ballot that caused the debacle in Florida CD13 in 2006. Remember, auditing doesn't solve anything, it just finds the problems that we know we need to solve. To deter fraud, again, auditing doesn't deter fraud, it just helps find fraud so that people who do it might perhaps expect that they would be punished for it. And one minimal way of punishing people who practice fraud is to make sure that they don't get to steal the election they were trying to steal. So they're quite separate questions. When errors occur that flip elections, is there somebody to be punished? Or is it perhaps an honest mistake, where there doesn't necessarily need to be punishment of the people who were responsible, but maybe with an honest mistake, like perhaps a ballot that was poorly designed, and not allowing the election to stand where the outcome was in fact determined by a failure of the mechanism. Finally, assure ourselves and the public that the process is fair. And why do we audit? Ron said this very well. We do it to be efficient, individual stamps, so that we can link a particular ballot to what the machine thought the particular ballot was. Then we must sample in units such as precincts. Or if in a precinct there are two machines and we have separate counts of machine 1 and machine 2, then we should sample units as small as possible where there is a link between what the machine thought was the result of looking at that set of ballots and what we verify by looking manually is in that set of ballots. We want to achieve good confidence. That's the concepts of statistical power that Ron talked about who won. It does not depend on the percentage of units audited. I'm going to give you another example. If you go home learning nothing but this one fact today, this will be an important thing. You don't need to sample a large fraction of the data. You only need to sample enough data. If I asked you if the soup tasted right and I gave you a drop of soup to taste, you couldn't figure that out. But if I gave you a nice, solid tablespoonful and asked you to savor it and think about it, you could tell me. And you could tell me that if the tablespoon came out of a cup of soup, it came out of a vat of soup, as long as the vat was well stirred, so that what I was tasting was representative of the whole thing. So it's the number of units sampled that gives you power. It is not the fraction of the size of the population. You need to look at enough units, and what is enough depends upon how close the race is. Okay, what is statistical power? It's the probability that if the outcome were wrong, we would find a problem in the audit. The audit is successful if it finds at least one problem. The thing that saves us here is that typically races are not close, so small audits have very high power. So if we use our audit budget wisely, we can sample lightly everywhere to maintain this surveillance, to figure out what recurrent and important problems are. And we will save ourselves enough resources to sample it as heavily as needed in each race. So the SAFE procedure calculates the minimum number of precincts that we need to look at in order to, the minimum number of precincts in which there could be serious problems that would be enough to flip the election. If there's a wide margin, you'd have to make changes all over the place in order to change the electoral outcome. If there's a narrow margin, the number of bad precincts can be very small to flip the election. And so you need to understand that in order to use Ron's rule of thumb about how many do you have to look at to have a good chance of finding it. So then you need to randomly select things, you need to audit them, and the point of this particular auditing protocol that we're talking about is you want to look at enough so that if no problems are found, when you get done, you can feel confident that the election was okay. Just to emphasize the point that tiered auditing doesn't do it, even though it's a good idea to tier your audits, because I've been talking about doing more when races are close and doing less when they're not. This is a palette of information about looking at all federal elections over the years 2002 to 2006, that if you wanted to do 99% confident audits, ones where you sample enough in every race to have a good chance of finding a problem, have a 99% chance of finding a problem if it's present, then you can do that much more effectively by tailoring the auditing to each race. The tiered audits will still fail to have 95% power in more than 10% of the time. So what you see at the bottom is the cost overall in numbers of votes that you had to look at by hand in order to achieve an outcome. And you'll see, for instance, with a tiered audit, it takes 20.5 million votes calibrated in all those federal elections across all of those years. And the 10% audits are inefficient. They take almost 3 times as many votes. Almost 60 million votes would have had to have been hand audited, whereas 95 or 99% power is achieved relatively efficiently. Lots of votes went into that. A small fraction have to be audited, but you want to do it sensibly. Thank you.